54 Commonwealth countries today convened the 21st Commonwealth Conference that brought together over 44 education ministers and education stakeholders around the world to share knowledge and good practices in the education sector in a bid to bring about equality in the sector. Elizabeth Atieno with more.
The education sector was one of the hard-hit sectors due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Schools were forced to close for over 38 weeks and learning was made online. A situation that exacerbated existing educational inequalities across the world.
Over 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries were impacted by the sudden closure of learning institutions. The closures on average lasted about 38 weeks.
Research from World Bank indicates that before the pandemic, over 258 million young people were out of school. A further 617 million, 202 million being from Africa, were unable to achieve the minimal literacy skills.
The shock brought by the COVID-19 pandemic and other disasters have heightened challenges that call for a rethink of learning education, learning spaces, and processes such as engagement of parents and communities, access to quality learning of children and young people in from most of the disadvantaged households.
It is this huge education gap that has brought together over 54 education ministers from Commonwealth nations with an aim of streamlining the education sector after the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this important conference, which brings together ministers of education from 54 Commonwealth member countries, as well as education stakeholders, to address educational priority issues towards Agenda 2030.
We do indeed need to rethink education because we are at an inflection point. We are at a moment in history when we have a unique opportunity to build better and more resilient education systems and to accelerate learning for all.
However, Kenya is said to have made remarkable progress in access to education, with the government stating that since the inception of free education, the number of students in primary school has increased from 56% in 2002 to 92% in 2018, while for those in secondary school has risen from 67% in 2016 to 71% in 2019.
Education gains most of the Commonwealth countries have made over the last 50 years are at serious risk of being rolled back in the absence of major transformation of the education sector.
The Commonwealth nations are now pushing for the implementation of specific actions to provide the opportunity for quality education to young boys and girls by 2030. As of now, it is estimated that 6 in 10 young people will be finishing secondary school by 2030, while over 377.4 million students will be through with their university or post-secondary education.
To achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and create the means by which low-income countries can become high-income countries requires a renewed effort to expand quality education opportunities for all children.
The 21st Commonwealth Conference on Education Ministers, which was officially opened by the Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i and his education counterpart Professor George Magoha, comes 4 years after the 20th conference held in Fiji, which explored the sustainability and resilience in the education sector in the face of climate change. It is a 2-day conference that seeks to address the negative impacts brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic that have since disrupted access to universal education, especially among 54 Commonwealth countries. Elizabeth Atieno for TV 47, Nairobi.